Okay, so this might be the day of videos from me, and more videos from me, and more videos for me. If I can't, I might put this another day, I might not, but this was planned for Halloween, and I got a little carried away with my ghost stories in Virginia. So I thought I would do the rest of the video that I was going to do the first time around. Welcome to the D. Louise book series. I'm Christina Carey, Istina. This is where I read books, talk about books, no special effects, no theme music, none of that fancy stuff going on here. And I got my little uh candles here. My little pine cones for Halloween. Little decorations here. Just a few little minor things. So if you have not seen my ghost stories of Virginia, I will try and put the link in here for this, and I will also put in the link for the Cozy Mysteries from last year, and also for the books that were last year too. And so like I said, I got so carried away with that book that I didn't get to talk to the ghost prison. Once I felt someone touch the back of my neck. I felt like the tip of an ice-cold finger. But when I turned to look, there was nobody there. Night falls, the moon rises, and 15-year-old Billy starts his first night as a prison guard. But this is no ordinary prison. These are haunted cells that can't be used, whispers and cries in the night, and dreaded witch hell. Billy is warned to stay away from the prisoners down in the witch well, but what prisoner could be so frightening? Billy is about to find out. The Ghost of Duffy's Cut. In 1832, 57 Irish Catholic workers were brought to the United States to lay one of the most difficult miles of American railway, Duffy's Cut of the Pennsylvania Railroad. These men were chosen in the eyes of the railroad company that hired them. They were expendable. Deaths were common during the building of the railway, when this stretch was worse than most. When cholera swept the camp, basic medical attention and community support was denied. In the end, all 57 men, the entire work crew, died and were buried in a mass unmarked graves. Their families in Ireland were never notified about what happened to them. The company did its best to cover up the incident, which was certainly one of the worst labor tragedies in U.S. history. The saga of Duffy's Cut unfolds against a backdrop of rapidly industrializing America, focusing particularly on the Irish laborers who built the railroads. Who were these men? Who hired them? Where did they come from? Perhaps most importantly, why did they die? And this is based on archaeological digs. Lisa Tado, Ghost Lover. Beyond anonymous screens, an army of school and beautiful girls manages dating service called Ghost Lover. Huh. Forwarding system for text messages and promises to spare you the anguish of trying to stay composed while communicating with your crush. A star-studded fun political fundraiser at Los Angeles mansion. A trio of women competes to win the heart of slick guest of honor. In the tense hospital waiting room, an inseparable pair of hard partying friends crashes into their life's responsibilities, but the magic of the glory gaze comes alive again at the moment when they least expect it. I don't know how that makes that a ghost story, but anyway. Scary stories to tell in the dark. The Haunted Notebook of Sarah Bellows. The Halloween young Thomas Milner considered running over the scarecrow. The thought had occurred to him many times before, ever since he'd gotten his learner's permit. Tommy had fantasized about using their car like one of the thrashers on the family farm. His cruel mouth would split into a smile, and his knuckles would whiten on the sterling steering wheel as he imagined mowing down the straw man like some oversized bale of wheat. Yes, Tommy always hated that scarecrow. As he turned down the driveway and drove past Harold, at the scarecrow moonlit face just stared, same as always, from its crooked stake in the ground. Reaching the farmhouse at the end of the drive, Tommy killed the engine and staggered out of the driver's seat. He reeked of beer, ashes, and something more pungent. Punks are dead, Tommy slurred at the brown streaks on his jeans and Letterman jacket. His scorched fingers still smarted from this. They swatted against the flaming paper bag. Ugh. I don't know if I like that one. Annabelle Lee. This is going to be in Flashback Monday, or was in Flashback Monday. She doesn't know why her enigmatic uncle had stowed her deep underground in a military-style bunker. He left her with a few German words, a barely controlled guard dog, and a single command. Don't open the door for anybody. You got it, not even me. Look at this sucker. Look at this sucker. I don't believe in ghosts, but I love ghost stories, and I suspected I'm not the only reader to make this confession. The trick of any story is to draw us into an unfamiliar world, or a world in which the familiar is made. Joyce Carol Oates, Lee Thomas, Alison Littlewood, Pat Canagan, Richard Bowes, Gemma Files. Lots of ghost stories. Look at this thick sucker. The best horror of the year. Lord Byron, Annie Bilso, Siobhan Carroll, Gemma Files, Joe Hill, Thomas Oldhevlet, Robert Sherman, and Michael Marshall Smith. And our final obsolete note. 7 houses and 7 stories are strange. A person is missing, or a truth or memory. Some rooms are enticing, some unmoored, others empty. But in Samantha Schweblin's dense and mind-bending tales, something always creeps back. A ghost, a fight, a trespasser, a list of things to do before you die. That was interesting. Let's do one bonus story from here, shall we? It was to Virginia's colonists an ominous sign of impending disaster. It occurred sometime during the latter months of the year 1675. A great comet appeared in the sky, sweeping across the heavens, trailing a bright orange trail of fire. Soon after this eerie phenomenon came the flight of tens of thousands of passenger pigeons. For days they blanketed the sky, blotting out the sun. Then in the spring of 1676, a plague of locusts raged the colony, devouring every plant in sight and stripping the trees of their budding leaves. But to the colonists, the comet was the worst sign. Many remembered that another comet had streaked across the horizon just before the terrible Indian massacre of 1644. Thus, it was no real surprise to them, because they believed in such spectral omens when the year following one of the bloodiest and most notorious chapters of Virginia history was written. It began on a quiet summer Sunday when some colonists passing by Stafford Colony Plantation of Thomas Matthew on their way to church discovered the overseer, Robert Henn, lying in a pool of blood. Nearby lay an Indian servant dead. Henn also was mortally wounded before he expired. He managed to grasp Dags. The word struck fear in the ears of the passerbyers, for Henn mentioned the name of a tribe of Indians known for their fierce attacks on white men and women. And so the seeds had been sown for what had led to the largest and most violent insurrection of the colonial era up to that time, Bacon's Rebellion. Dashing Nathaniel Bacon, 18 years old, had arrived in the colony only 3 years earlier. Well educated and well endowed, he had been described by biographers as a slender, attractive, dark haired young man with an impetuous, fiery temper and a most persuasive tongue. But perhaps most of all else, Bacon, a leader of men, while Governor Berkeley remained inactive and inattentive in Jamestown. Planters sought out Bacon to lead retaliatory strikes against the marauding Indians. When his own plantation was attacked and overseer killed, Bacon agreed. He proved to be an unskilled and capable military commander. One marched his forces towards Punky tribe, deep in Dragon Swamp. Later, Bacon overpowered the Susquehannons, killing at least 100 Indians and capturing others. Berkeley, furious at the unauthorized attacks launched by his rebellious group, dispatched his own troops to capture Bacon and his men. For the next several weeks, the two men waged a cat-and-mouse game that involved daring, intrigue, and bloodshed. At one point, Bacon surrendered, was brought before Berkeley, and was given when he repented, but then he escaped, returned with a force of 600 men, and captured Jamestown, demanding a commission to fight the Indians, as well as the repeal of some harsh colonial laws. With no other choice under the show of arms, Berkeley granted the wishes. But when Bacon set out against chasing the Indians, the governor repudiated all agreements and sent his troops after the rebel. Where's my... After several skirmishes, Bacon recaptured Jamestown and had it sacked and burned to the ground. Berkeley, who had retreated to the eastern shore, meanwhile, was regrouping his forces for a final and decisive confrontation. It never came to pass. Bacon, who had suffered an attack of malaria at Jamestown, fell critically ill in Gloucester and died of dysentery there on October 16, 1676, at the age of 29. With the leader lost, the rebellion fell apart, and the Berkeley forces captured many of Bacon's men. A large number of men were hanged, continuing for several more months, the tragedy forewarned by the appearance of the comet. For 3 months in 1676, about 70 of Bacon's followers occupied a large brick mansion in Surrey County, just across the James River, Jamestown, called Allen Brick's house. It was ever known as Beacon's Castle, now operated by the Association for the Preservation of Virginia Antiquities. This imposing brick structure was built sometime after 1655. It stands amidst a large grove oaks. There are 2 expansive panel first-floor rooms. No more rooms on the second floor, and that was described as a dungeon-like attic on the 3rd floor. There are several interesting love stories associated with Beacon's castle, ranging from the romantic to the bitter to the sweet. Consider, for example, the relationship of Emmett Robinson and his wife Indy. There is a window at this castle inscribed with a poem Dr. Robinson etched to his wife. In storm or sunshine, joy and strife, thou art my own, much loved wife, treasure blessings of my life. There is the Civil War romance of Virginia Haskins, whose father owned the house at the time, and the dashing young Confederate soldier Sidney Lanier, who later was to become one of the South's most famous and eloquent poets. Stationed nearby, Lanier was a frequent visitor in 1863 and 64. He became entranced with the lovely and well-educated Gina. He wrote to his friends that he'd become soul friends, and that as he read the works of great poets to her, she is a perfect blaze of enthusiasm. Often during the idyllic interlude from the horrible war being waged around them, Gina and Sidney would ride off into the greenwoods of Surrey County, picnic, talk, and plan. Lanier passionately called her his little brown bird, and in August 1864 he was called away with his unit. He pledged to return as soon as possible, and they would be married. They wrote to each other frequently. When Mrs. Hanks died, Gina felt her responsibility was to care for her grief-stricken father and his 7 young sons. Sadly, she rejected Lanier's proposal. Still, although he eventually married and created the works which revere this day, they corresponded faithfully for the rest of their lives in the form of poetry. The third love story was substantiated, nevertheless, has passed down for generations. During the 1800s, a young girl was forced to meet her sweetheart, a boy from the nearby farm, secret on the other side of the cornfield, because her father did not approve of them. Despite the predicament, Bacon's Castle hostesses will tell you, they shared the joy of love and some treasured happy moments. That is until one ill-fated evening when the girl was returning to the castle later than usual and had to light a candle to ascend the stairs to her room. She tripped on the stairs and her long hair caught on fire. She did not scream for help for fear of incurring the wrath of her father. Instead, she fled from the house in a state of shock and ran through the cornfield, desperate to reach her sweetheart. By the time she got there, she was burned critically and she died in his arms. On another occasion, Mrs. Warren came into the downstairs parlor one morning and found the glass globe from a favorite nickel-plated reading lamp had been shattered into tiny fragments. Strangely, not a drop of kerosene from it had spilled onto the carpet. Also, a leather-bound dictionary had been flung across the room onto a sofa. An iron stand which it normally rested had hurled to a distant corner. No rational explanation had offered to clear this up. Richard Reynolds, curator from the castle from 1973 to 81, used to tell of the time one morning at 3:30 when he was awakened by the sound of his 2.5-year-old son laughing at his crib. "Daddy, where's the lady?" "What lady?" "The one that was tickling me." On another occasion, a few years later, a tour guide was standing in the great hall one morning before the castle was open to the public when something ran by her from the outside passageway and went into the dining hall and into another chamber on her side. She heard feet running on the hardwood floor but didn't see anybody. These are just good stories, aren't they? They're just good stories. I hope you have a good Halloween. Have a good one.